Quite recently, I made a video talking about how I had a 200-day meditation streak and what the results of that streak felt like. Now, about a week ago, I ended up losing the streak I had going, and so today I want to first of all make some revisions and additions to what I said in my previous video, and then also talk about why I lost my streak and some thoughts I have about it. So first, let's talk about why this whole thing happened. Basically, the reason I lost the streak was because I had a friend that came over and stayed in my house. So here for the summer, I'm staying in a house that, it's not like the actual house I live in for most of the year. It's just somewhere we're staying for the summer. And one of my friends somebody that used to be a really close friend of mine, but moved away, and I haven't seen him in 2 years, right? So he's a great friend of mine. He came over, and he was staying over here, and we went out to basically camp for one of the nights. And that night, when we went to go camping, I forgot to meditate. It's not, normally I meditate at nighttime, and it's part of my routine, but when you're camping, it's not something that comes to mind. I was having fun with my friend, we were talking, and I forgot, basically. And his streaks are really unforgiving. You make one slip up, one mess up, and hundreds of days of hard work basically goes to waste. And so what do I think of the situation? Well, honestly, I think it's not that big of a deal that I lost the streak. And I think it's important to not put too much emphasis and importance on these streaks. Yes, they're important, like they're useful. And I've talked about this in my video about how I got consistent at meditation. But basically, these streaks provide a reward system for your brain where your brain really wants to keep this streak going. So it really makes you stay consistent because you're like, oh, I can't, like, this unforgiving nature of streaks is what makes their existence push you much harder, which is a good part of streaks. But the not so good part of streaks is also the unforgiving nature, where if you have a friend over for a day and you're having, fun with them and you forget for a day, it's gone. So, do I regret not meditating that day? Well, in the sense that I lost my streak, yes. Like, ideally, I didn't want to lose that streak because it was something I was proud of. Uh, but in a sense, I also, like, if you take the streak aspect away from it, I don't think I necessarily made a bad choice, or it wasn't that important that I didn't remember to meditate that day. I've been meditating consistently now for basically a whole year. 200 days, plus I had some streaks going on earlier. And just because I missed one day, right, isn't gonna change it. Like, you go to the gym, right? The meditation is kind of like the gym. So you've been consistent at the gym and you've been going to the gym for over 200 days, and one day you aren't able to go to the gym because some friends that you haven't seen in a long time came over and you had to have fun with them and you prioritized that over the gym and you lost your gym streak. Like, I think there's no problem in that, right? It's okay if you skip one day at the gym, right? Just because you skipped one day at the gym doesn't mean like all of your gains are gone. It doesn't mean that you can't go back tomorrow and the day after and the day after and continue being consistent. Just because you missed one day and the streak is gone, that is not the end of the world. And I think in that case, it's even the right choice to prioritize seeing that friend while you can over, maintaining some sort of streak. And so yeah, that's my thoughts on that whole situation. Like, again, I'm disappointed in myself for getting rid of that streak, but what can you do about it? Sometimes I forgot and it went away. And so now I want to make some additions and revisions, per se, to the original video where I talked about how I was actually quite disappointed in the overall benefits of meditation that I had experienced. And what I want to say about this is, first of all, more recently, I've noticed I'm way more aware of my thoughts, and I think this is a product of my more consistent meditation. Let me explain what I mean. Basically, more aware of my thoughts means whenever I have these thought processes that occur in my brain, for example, when I am thinking about doing a bad habit, there's these two voices in my head, and they're arguing with each other. One is saying, "Oh, do the bad habit, do the bad habit." It doesn't matter. Like, it's coming up with all the cope, right? And that's the bad part of the brain encouraging you to get that cheap dopamine. And then there's the more rational, the wiser part of my brain that prefers delayed gratification, and that says, no, don't do it, don't do it. You know what you need to do. And this argument in my mind, normally it happened almost subconsciously, like without me realizing this argument would be constantly taking place in my mind every time I had to make a important decision, and I wasn't really aware of it. Like, the argument would happen in my mind and one side would win out and I would go with that. But recently I've been almost like taking myself out of the argument and being able to observe the voices and what they're saying. And I think that's a really interesting skill, and it's given me a lot of insight about myself and our thought processes. Like, not just mine, but I think people in general. Just observing yourself and learning lessons from that reflects a lot about other people as well. Because really, our overall thought processes are not different. There's a reason we all, like, all of our brains at the end of the day, to a genetic level, are programmed very similarly. Yes, there are personality differences among people, but a lot of the things, like, our brains really liking to take the path of least resistance and enjoying that cheap dopamine, and the excuses your brain comes up with to continue chasing those cheap dopamine sources is very similar and quite the same in most people. And so I think through meditation, I've been able to more clearly observe these voices and hear them out in a better manner, which has enabled me to understand both more about myself and people. And it's really interesting to hear the way these voices talk in my head and observing the thoughts kind of from the outside and saying, so this is what's going on in my head. And this is the thought process in my head that won out this time. So how can I take precautions for next time so that this same thought process doesn't win again next time? And I think that's very interesting, right? Again, of course, there are other benefits to meditation, and I've kind of talked about it in the previous video, but this is the one addition I wanted to make, and it's the one thing that I found most interesting and most notable throughout my time meditating. And yes, I do intend to get back on the streak, get the meditation up and running, going again. And yeah, that's all. For anyone still thinking about it, yes, I would encourage you to meditate. I think it's definitely something that you should pick up. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.